your passion, you were sharing your passion at the height of the, I call the Renaissance of music. You know, I mean, it was innocent. There was so much communal, tribal vibe going on, even carried into the punk movement. You know, is anti everything that punk was. It was really a tribe. You know, if you were part of the punk rock community, you knew all the bands. The bands shared bills with each other.
It was a subculture, yeah.
Yeah. What, you know, how do you explain that without sounding like a stodgy old, an aging rocker?
Well,
you know, we're allowed to.
I can't explain anything without sounding stodgy and old. But I think each generation has their look and their style and their identification, and it's more of a generation and more of time people went through than to associate it with a certain kind of music, and say, well, if you play that music 20 years later, then you have to be the same as somebody 20 years earlier. You know, people play jazz now without having to be the exact same lifestyle as jazz players from the 40s.
Yeah.
You know, certainly. You know, punk rock has evolved through all kinds of different phases. You know, the grunge period from Seattle was certainly influenced by the punk kids of the 70s, and, you know, the Green Day and the pop bands of today that are using that style and using, you know, being much stronger in their expression and what they're saying, and yet still it doesn't have that, you know, no future feeling that the punks had. You know, it's much more positive. I mean, even to some of the punks, you know, I feel that the Clash and the Sex Pistols, for instance, are quite opposite. You know, whereas the Clash
Really?
were,
Okay.
The Sex Pistols were always screaming and angry about things that were wrong, and the Clash had that anger, but they also asked, what can we do to make it right? I see this picture, it reminds me that Sid was smarter than he looked. For one thing, wearing the button in the first place. He was a mess, but he liked to project that image. And we were having a hot dog during a sound break, and at one point I picked up the camera to take a picture, and he said, wait, let me put some more mustard and ketchup on it. And he smeared mustard and ketchup all over the hot dog and then all over his face to kind of make a better photo out of it, that he really was a mess. But it really sums him up, because Sid was a mess.
He was a
and
mess,
I don't
man.
know why people
He lived
idolized
hard.
him so much. He had a tough time in his life. You know, happy people don't take drugs.
Right.
You know.
And I guess we gotta talk about Zepp. I mean, Zepp is here. Zepp is Zepp and Bowie, but the Zeppelin. I mean, people forget they were the kings of rock extravagance. Probably
Well,
because
that's why
of
I like
Peter.
this picture so much. This was actually the first day I met them. And Lisa Robinson called me up and said, we're going to go see Led Zeppelin. They're playing in, I think, it was Pittsburgh that we flew to or someplace.
And you got to fly
And
on the jet?
I said, we're going to Pittsburgh today? He goes, well, don't worry, they have their own plane. And I love this picture. It really sums up the decadence and the excess of the 70s. This plane actually was called the Starship. Different bands would rent it, and they would paint your name on it. You'd rent it for a month. I was on the same plane with Elton John. Alice Cooper had it for a while. The Rolling Stones had it for a while. It was a really, I think the Allman Brothers had it a couple of weeks. It's an exceptional aircraft, a big one. But inside, it was really kind of decked out pretty special. They had some rather large, bigger than even first-class seats nowadays, about maybe a dozen of them in the front section. And then there was some real lounge chairs in an area that had a brass bar with a piano built in. And then in the back, there were two bedrooms, one with an electric fireplace, you know, flickering as if there was a... It was pretty cushy for a plane, I'll tell you. It used to be... bands were much more appreciative of a photographer with some talent, because in order to take a picture, you had to be able to operate the machine in the first place. You had to know about exposure and about focus. It wasn't just timing. You had to know all the technical side of it. Now, if you know, when you want good pictures, you have to have a good photographer. And anybody taking 100 pictures is going to get a good one. But to get a good one consistently of something that somebody else wants you to take a picture of, rather than just something you happen to see that's good, that's difficult. That's the difference between professional amateurs, being able to do it on demand and come up with something good.
Bob, tell me a little bit about this. This is a really famous Kiss shot. I think we've seen this a few times in the record.
Cream magazine was doing a photo story where Kiss were average guys dressed in suits going to work one morning. They read a newspaper and heard that there was going to be a John Denver concert. And they decided that they were going to stage a phony John Denver concert, and instead Kiss would come out and save the world with rock and roll. And while we were doing the session, it started off with them in the subway dressed in these suits as if they were going to work in the morning reading a newspaper.
Right.
And then we went back and they changed into their KISS outfits, and we went back actually to a different subway station. We have a picture of them charging into a phone booth, pulling their ties off and coming out as KISS. And along the way, we took this picture on 23rd Street. And the band liked it so much that they decided to use it for their album cover, for Just to Kill.
At what point did you realize in your life that your art was accepted by the mass culture, that you had arrived, so to speak?
Have I?
Come on, your retrospective, some of the most famous
Well,
photographs of our icons.
I'm getting better. I'm working up. I've been in some museums already, actually. I don't know if there was a moment. You know, it's been a long process. I started showing my pictures in a gallery, I think as early as 1974. That I started showing signed prints. I started selling them more towards the 80s, like in 82, I had a really big exhibit here in New York. And since then, I've been selling prints, but it's only recently that I can actually pay the rent that way.
Wow. Just like a musician who has an archive, finally.
Yeah, I mean, you might have heard about somebody for a long time, but every month you've been hearing about them, there's a rent that come due, and it takes a while before you really catch up. It's a low-budget operation.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I think people forget that. They think you just slam in your American Idol-style photography, and you know, the world's your stage.
Well, people have always had a kind of idealistic view about a photographer and like working for a magazine. Like if your picture is published in Rolling Stone, they think you work for Rolling Stone. No photographer I know has ever gotten insurance benefits or unemployment benefits or any kind of employment benefits. We all work on a freelance, one shot, buy the picture kind of deal. Occasionally, you'll be hired to do a job on assignment, and they might even pay, say, your taxi fare or you know, maybe your processing or expenses like that. But you still get paid pretty much for the photos they use.
What's the highest compliment you ever had from one of your subjects?
I really like it when somebody asks for an extra print to give to their mother. And I've had that compliment from a lot of people, as diverse as Lou Reed or Bo Diddley or all kinds of people. When they ask for an extra shot.
Now Lou is tough, and that's good to get Lou
He didn't actually ask for one, but I gave him a print of him and his girlfriend, and a month or two later I got back a note saying that he'd given the picture to his mother, and he went to visit her, and she had it on the wall, and he said, "You've made my mother happy, and that makes me happy."
Nice.
And I thought that was a great compliment.
Yeah.
Some people like to take a picture that exposes a side of somebody's personality that they have, you know, they don't usually show. I usually try to take a picture that shows a person looking the way they want to look, that, you know, that they feel that's the right picture, that's a good picture of me. I like my subjects to like my pictures and to hire me back again. I don't like to catch an off moment, you know, exposing somebody. I like them to like it enough to want to give it to their mother.
Tell us about this Lennon picture.
Well, this was very interesting. The government, the Nixon administration of the U.S. government was trying to throw John Lennon out of the country. They felt threatened. Even though he was a pop star, they felt he had a real following and that he would somehow lead the election one way or the other. I felt that the Statue of Liberty was a symbol of welcome to America, and that it would be a great media picture if John would pose by the Statue of Liberty, welcoming him to America like he should be. And John agreed with me that it would be a good place to go. And I don't usually get a lot of planning up front. We don't have 16 meetings before I take a picture. We didn't ask permission from the Parks Department. We just got on the ferry boat with the rest of the tourists, and we went out one afternoon to the Statue of Liberty, walked around in front. John posed, and we took the pictures. And the funny thing, actually, when we were getting to the ferry, he looked around at all the buildings that were down at Wall Street, and he said, you know, I better I'm paying the rent on every single one of these buildings. You know, I'm paying some of the rent because I have a lawyer in all of these different buildings. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah, I got a lot of lawyers. And he says, the funny thing about the lawyers is that when I first go to visit them, they have a nice practice in a normal-sized office. And then when I come back a few months later, they have an office twice the size and my picture's on the wall.
Yeah. So, Bob, thanks for being on the Culture Catch. This is very enlightening, and I hope people really understand the world of photography a little bit more, and that it's not all glamorous, even though you're hanging out with really cool icons.
There's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of work involved to get the right shot in the right time and carry all the equipment and get it there.
If somebody wants to buy some of your work?
Well, I have a website, bobgruen.com, and they can contact the Morrison Hotel Gallery here on Prince Street. There's links through my website. And if they want to reach me, they can go to my website, bobgruen.com. I do it myself. It's my hobby. I like to be in touch with people out there. They send me emails all the time.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, this has been very enlightening, and we look for more from you in the near future.
I hope to keep, coming up with more things.
Good deal.
Culture.